the systems. We just needed to get more energy in there to get proper flow back. Something that happens a lot of times when we lose power is we also lose our cell phone towers. As of last night, there were 32 towers affected through the storm in those mentioned counties: Eccles, Lowndes, Cook, Clinch, and Berrien. As of this morning, we've restored the majority of power to those, whether it be through emergency backup services, generators, things of that nature, or we've been able to return power. So for those in the area, they should start getting cell phone service, data, those type things restored, hopefully sooner than later. Currently, the port is being inspected in Savannah. The goal is to have it back open through the Coast Guard by 11 a.m. this morning. And once that's done, they'll move to Brunswick, and the goal is to have Brunswick open by mid-afternoon. Bridges that were closed, the Sydney to Lanier and the Talmadge, have been inspected by DOT. They have been reopened, and maritime traffic has been allowed to return through the Houlihan Bridge. We currently have 9 state routes still closed, but that is significantly down since last night. Crews have been out working, ensuring the right-of-ways were cleared, and making those roads at least passable. Doesn't mean they've fully returned to full operation, but they are passable at the time. And finally, just want to hit on some of the agricultural impacts. We've seen and gotten reports of significant crop loss. Certainly, Commissioner Harper and his team are down there right now doing ground assessments, getting us ground truth on what that looks like, and we'll go from there. As far as FEMA relationship goes, we've been in very close and constant contact with our regional administrator, and so we feel that as the need arises and we get closer to those numbers, we will be reaching out to them to do damage assessments along with us, and that will determine whether we seek federal assistance from the government. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Governor Kemp. Again, sir, thank you so much for your quick response, and we're going to deal with that.
Well, thank you, Director Stallings, and on behalf of Marty and the girls and I just want to offer our thoughts and prayers to the family of our fatality that we've had in the state and those others that are suffering. Also to the family of Sheriff Rogers, who was killed in the line of duty just a couple of days ago. It's been a tough week for a lot of Georgians out there. Just to let you know, we're working on plans to be on the ground to view the storm damage tomorrow. Commissioner Harper is doing an assessment today with his team on the crop situation, and we need a little more time to get that put together. We want to let everybody have a full day of work to try to get the power back on, roads cleared. So we're looking at going down tomorrow to view the storm damage. I just want to thank Chris and the team. They've done an incredible job. For those of you that were in the State Operations Center yesterday, you saw the state agencies working with our local partners on the ground, our private sector companies like utilities, rural water, and others that have worked throughout the night. Just an amazing response. They've gotten a lot done, and we know today with the weather clearing and getting a full day of daylight to be able to work, we're excited about that. And I just want to thank them for literally moving in right on the heels of the storm yesterday and working through the night. I did want to take just a few minutes to speak to some history that's trying to repeat itself over the last few days here in Georgia. Many of you will recall that in the final weeks of 2020, I clearly and repeatedly said that I would not be calling a special session of the General Assembly to overturn the 2020 election results because such an action would have been unconstitutional. It was that simple. Fast forward today, nearly 3 years later, memories are fading fast. There have been calls by one individual in the General Assembly and echoed outside of these walls by the former president for a special session that would ignore current Georgia law and directly interfere with the proceedings of a separate but equal branch of government. Now, my concerns with the Fulton County District Attorney's handling of this case and the special purpose grand jury have been well documented. We are now seeing what happens when prosecutors move forward with highly charged indictments and trials in the middle of an election. Simply put, it sows distrust and provides easy pickings state of Georgia, as long as I'm governor, we're going to follow the law and the Constitution, regardless of who it helps or harms politically. Over the last few years, some inside and outside of this building may have forgotten that, but I can assure you, I have not. The oath I took with my hand on the Bible that's right behind me, in January, is the same Bible that I took in my inauguration in 2019. And in Georgia, we will not be engaging in political theater that only inflames the emotions of the moment. We will do what is right. We will uphold our oaths as public servants. And it's my belief that our state will be better off for it. And with that, Director Stallings and I are glad to answer any questions. Greg?
Governor, I've talked to at least 5 Republican state senators who have directly gotten threats because of what you just mentioned, because of all the inflamed rhetoric. Are you worried about that? What is your message directly to Colton Moore and others who are inflaming those tensions?
Well, look, I know full well about threats. You know, my family and I have been dealing with that over the last 3 years. So I understand how a lot of the legislators are feeling right now. It is wrong. It is unnecessary. And in the state of Georgia, when we have people that are making threats against our citizens, whether they're elected officials or not, we take that very seriously, and we will act on that. I've instructed Director Hosey and the rest of our law enforcement community to work with the General Assembly to do just that.
Governor, separately, I got a question for you and a question for Director. For you, Governor, Senator Moore is also talking about pursuing the funding, the statutory funding that goes to District Attorney's Office. Can you address that?
Well, I think the Speaker laid that out pretty clearly yesterday, because if he's wanting to defund a district attorney, it's going to defund all of them. And this is a conversation. He's a legislator. If he wants to have that conversation, he can do it during the regular session that we have coming up in January. But let me just say this. You know, these are the distractions that get you to lose elections. The last time we were talking about special sessions here in the state of Georgia, just a few weeks later, the Republican majority lost 2 U.S. Senate races. And I can tell you that as long as I'm governor, we are going to stay focused on the issues that help all Georgians. That is the way you win races. That is the way you move forward. Things like cutting taxes, doing $2 billion tax rebates, suspending the gas tax that saved our families and our businesses $1.7 billion, teacher pay raises, law enforcement pay raises, going after street gangs, street racers, human traffickers, drug dealers. 3 years in a row of record economic development with good paying jobs and investments in all parts of our state. That's what helps people fight through Joe Biden's 40-year high inflation, not focusing on the past or some grifter scam that somebody's doing to help them raise a few dollars into their campaign account. That is what we're going to stay focused on. Do you have something for the director?
Is the state of Georgia, you kind of hinted at it, the state of Georgia pursuing a federal declaration. Has the state reached that point, you believe, to ask for a federal? Because Florida and South Carolina got one this morning.
And
Yes.
There's a formula that I've forgotten is when you can apply for this.
Yes, sir. So that's what we're out there doing this morning. Fortunately, we had the storm in our state a lot longer than Florida did. We had the storm in our state a lot longer than South Carolina did. So we've got a long track of disaster and debris to look into. The state of Georgia is unique. We have a $19 million threshold that we have to reach for the state before we're allowed to even pursue that. Then we have to confirm that each county has met their minimum threshold. So if a county doesn't meet their minimum threshold, it can't go into the state's overall threshold. So give us just a little patience today. The goal is to seek that number, and then if that's the case, we certainly have no issues moving forward with the next budget.
That's the threshold for damage to public infrastructure, right?
That is correct. Individual assistance is different. We're out there looking at the counties to receive individual assistance, and most likely we'll get that individual assistance by the end of the day, that response.
And what is the county minimum?
Each county has their own, and it's based on population.
Let me just add too, though, our focus right now is making sure we're getting people's power back on. We're making sure that people that may have big trees in their living room have shelter or other places to stay that we've got. We mentioned last night, getting cell phone and inoperability back up where we're, people and the responding agencies can coordinate. It's going to take us a little time to get these assessments done. I mean, we will work on them as fast as we can. As we mentioned, Commissioner Harper's on the ground today. Commissioner King is already focused on the insurance side of things, and I know Commissioner Thompson at Labor is also working with businesses got hurt, potentially for unemployment issues. And so, we have the whole state team responding and working with the locals. Chris always makes a great point. Remember, a lot of these locals, they're out there working, helping restore and do storm damage assessments for their local communities, and their own homes may be damaged right now. So we're working as fast as we can, and we'll do the assessments and keep you posted on that.
Governor, what's your message to those folks who are waiting for their cell service to come back, that are dealing with damage in their living room?
Well, my message would be that, look, we are on the ground. We were on the ground as soon as the storm passed yesterday afternoon. I think you might want to give a little more detailed update on cell phones, because I think we've gotten a lot of the towers back up, right?
Yes, sir. So originally, as I mentioned earlier, there were 32 towers. That number has drastically reduced down. Don't have a tower number, but there's nowhere now that we don't have overlapping service. So it might not be the primary tower that is down, but there is a connecting tower that's overlapping. So it might be sporadic, you might get dropped, but you will start getting service, so you can start reaching out those. And that's key, because a lot of times we live in a world now where most folks don't have home phone numbers anymore. And so cell service is extremely important. So we did start seeing an uptick in some of our 911 calls and things like that but that's a good thing, because that lets us know that we're starting to get the power and the cell phone service recovered.
Governor Kemp, can you talk about the farmers? I know you mentioned you haven't gotten any calls as of yesterday. Have you heard anything since we've spoken after a touchdown in South Georgia?
Not a tremendous amount, but I have gotten a few reports of people losing a lot of pecan trees. I know for sure one farmer in Eccles County had heavy damage to a lot of their center pivot irrigation. As you know, down there's a lot of vegetable crops, carrots and other things, as well as traditional row crop. And you think about big fields, big center pivot irrigation systems. I mean, they're very expensive, so that's a lot of damage that will add up very quickly. Certainly, I haven't really heard too much. I'll know more today when Commissioner Harper gets done, but I haven't heard too many reports about standing crops, be it cotton. Hopefully the peanuts will be all right since they're still in the ground, but we just don't know yet.
Governor, you mentioned
we got a lot of irons in the fire right now with power, still clearing roads, and the initial task force of getting in there.
Governor, you mentioned the DA oversight law earlier. But do you support any efforts at all, whether it be hearings, efforts to strip funding, complaints filed to the DA Commission to reprimand Fonnie Willis?
Well, I haven't, as I mentioned in my remarks, I haven't seen anything legally that I think she's done. Now, listen, politically, I think this has been drug out way too long. It sows distrust out there. The legislature, they can have hearings right now. They don't have to have a special session. As you remember, they did that during the 2020 election cycle, and you had a lot of people going in a committee meeting, but they wouldn't go into a courtroom. So, we can have those conversations, and the legislature can have them, but we just need to be honest with people about what we're dealing with, and not inciting people. These rules and laws work both ways for all parties, Republican, Democrat, or otherwise. And so you have to be very careful when you're in power in government not to abuse that power, because if you do, you set the precedent for the other side using what you did in the future against you.
Governor, have you spoken with the Speaker at all after his letter, and also have you spoken with the Lieutenant Governor about all of this?
Yeah, I've not spoken with the Lieutenant Governor specifically about this. I just shot the Speaker a text yesterday afternoon. I've spoke to him recently about some other issues.
When you authorized that commission, you said you saw it as a tool, as a check on prosecutors who are soft on crime. Do you still see it as that?
Well, I didn't authorize it. Let's be clear. This went through a legislative process. It's been talked about for several years now. It's very similar to the Judicial Qualifications Commission that oversees our judges in the state, that I personally think have worked very well. There's their own colleagues that are on there, so you can deal with misconduct and other things. And so I think the prosecutor oversight bill is a good way to do that. It's a good way to hold people accountable, but also be judged by their peers. And I think the legislature did a great job of debating that bill and getting something that I was very comfortable signing. You know, I would note that the person that's raising this issue and pushing this issue voted against that bill.
Governor Dr. Stallings, it seems like that Idalia is, while serious, is less bad than either Matthew or Michael. Do you think that's a correct assessment at this time?
Well, if you weren't in the path of it, it was. If you were in the path of it and you got a house in Valdosta or in Clinch County or Eccles County or Ben Hill or Berrien County, it was just as bad. I mean, I've had multiple people texting me in Valdosta saying that city will not be the same after the cleanup's done, and that it was as bad as anything they've ever seen. So we are fortunate, as I said yesterday, that this storm was a narrow one, and it was fast moving, and it didn't set on us. But if you were in the path, it was devastating. And we are responding that way.
Governor, I'm sorry, that was last, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on.
I'll get that.